5 Sinister Survival Secrets My Father Revealed for Escaping Nebraska's Haunted Nightmares. Lydia Jones had always scoffed at the idea of curses, but that was before the phone calls began. The tight knots of fear coiling in her stomach pulled harder each time the static crackled through the receiver, whispering threats she couldn't bear to decipher. You can't escape the nightmares. The words slithered in and wrapped around her heart, squeezing tighter with every eerie delivery. In the small town of Whispering Pines, where every smile masked untold secrets, she felt the weight of dread waiting, lurking in the shadows. Working the late shift at Ruby's diner, she poured coffee like a machine, doing her best to ignore the way the townsfolk exchanged glances, uneasy whispers filling the air. Behind the counter, laughter sounded hollow underneath the clatter of plates and the grumbling of the old jukebox. But all she could think about was Tommy, her sweet, wide-eyed boy, alone at home in the dark. The first call had come during the dinner rush, the phone ringing loud over the cacophony. What now? She had muttered under her breath before picking it up, only to hear nothing but static. Deep down, however, something told her it was not just teenage pranks, it felt sinister. Shadows seemed to creep into her mind as she served the same greasy meals to the locals, their eyes watching her too closely, too sharply. Tommy had started waking up crying, his small voice trembling, telling her about figures lurking in his dreams. "Mom, they're chasing me, and they want to take me," he said, fear ricocheting through his innocent words. Each confession twisted deeper in Lydia's mind, feeding her panic. She had grown up hearing her father's stories of the family curse, never fully believing them, but now those tales clawed back into her life, rippling with truth she couldn't ignore. The calls intensified, each creeping closer to the truth she wished to deny until she finally decided to seek out her dad. "He knows something," she whispered to herself, hoping for comfort through the familiar tales that once sounded ludicrous. As she dug through the shadows of Whispering Pines, she stumbled upon stories of hidden secrets buried beneath cordial facades, monsters disguised as neighbors, and malevolent energy seeping through the walls. One stormy night, she darted home, the beast of anxiety nipping at her heels. Thunder rumbled, lightning split the sky, and out of the corner of her eye, she spotted a shadow that flickered in their rearview mirror, too quick, too sinister, too real. The chill running down her spine betrayed her attempts at courage. "Tommy, hurry!" she urged as they leaped from the car, drenched and panting, just as the phone rang again. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The world narrowed as Lydia stepped inside, her breaths quick and shallow. Tommy hesitated before answering the phone, his innocent face lit eerily by the dim light. "Yes," he whispered, his voice trembling with anticipation, "I've been waiting for you." As the shadows stretched around them, Lydia's heart slammed against her chest, her mind racing with the looming terror closing in. Who or what was on the other end? And as the whispers crawled back into her mind, she could see it, those nightmarish figures chasing her. Could she really protect Tommy from the monsters she still didn't fully understand? Lydia didn't know if she should grab the phone or her son. The sound of her heart pulsed loud in her ears, drowning out the thin static that crept through the receiver. Tommy stared, his wide eyes reflecting both fear and an unsettling calm that made her want to scream. "Mom, can I talk to them?" he said, his voice a fragile whisper. "No." She snapped, fear ramping up like a tide threatening to swallow them whole. She reached for the phone, but the static grew thicker, almost tangible, brushing against her skin like a wisp of smoke. "Tommy!" she exclaimed, swinging her attention back to him. He trembled, but there was something else in his eyes, a flicker of understanding. "Please, I have to." And before she could process what was happening, he took a step forward, hand reaching for the phone, cracking that delicate barrier of protection she believed she had. Lydia moved reflexively, grabbing his wrist, but he was stronger than she'd expected. "Let him go, Lydia," said a low, gravelly voice from the receiver, slithering out like a serpent. Every hair stood up on her arms. A chill gripped her heart as she released her hold. "What do you want?" she managed to ask, her voice trembling harder than she could control. "Tommy belongs to us, and you know it," the voice hissed, layers of malice entwined in the words. "The curse will consume you both unless you give him to us." "Give him to you?" Lydia spat, infuriated and horrified. "Why? What do you want with my boy?" Tommy's small body quaked beside her, and in that moment, she realized just how flimsy the walls of her defiance were. "His dreams are a bridge," came the reply, soft as a crumbling whisper. "He connects our world with yours, a doorway. In return for his submission, we offer safety from our nightmares. But defiance will only bring suffering." She felt the room twist and spiral around her. She couldn't breathe. The stories. The warnings. They rose like a storm, crashing against her mind. "Your father should have told you." The voice continued, malignant glee laced through it. "He knows a method to seal the door. But he lost the way, he failed no." She yelled, thrusting the phone down. "I will not let you take him." Suddenly, darkness swept through the room, a thick fog coiling around them. The lights flickered, and the jukebox in the corner stopped mid-song, plunging them into ominous silence. The air felt electric, churning with something malevolent, clawing at the edges of her sanity. Shadows shifted in the corners, whispering her name. A shrill scream shattered the silence. "Tommy." She whirled just in time to see him convulsing, hands gripping his head, fighting against an unseen force. "Mom! Help!" he cried, his small voice now laced with terror. Lydia rushed to his side, but the shadows surged, wrapping around her son with cold, clammy fingers. Panic surged in her heart. She grabbed him, pulling him toward the door, but it slammed shut, an unseen barrier blocking their escape. "Leave, Lydia! Leave him!" the voice shrieked, mixing with the wind howling outside. "No!" she screamed back, the last shred of hope burning away inside. She thought of the stories, the secrets her father kept. Her fingers began to tremble, clutching at knowledge that felt just beyond reach. Could there be a way? "Tommy, hold on tight!" she yelled, forcing her panic into determination. "We can fight this." But as she did, she felt something slithering inside her mind, a dark remembrance of her father's warnings. Would she dare uncover the truth he hid? In an instant, the horror inside her shifted. A choice lay before her. Give in to fear and lose Tommy, or embrace the dark secrets to protect him. It was clear she could only go deeper into the abyss. "Mom!" Tommy cried, the shadows deepening. "Hold on, sweetheart, I'm coming for you," Lydia vowed, gritting her teeth. As she felt the darkness closing in, she knew the time for courage had come, and perhaps her father's stories weren't just folklore after all, but would she find the strength to confront the ancient evil waiting to engulf them both? The chilling answer loomed, hanging in the air as the shadows erupted around them. The shadows thickened, grotesque shapes swirling as if alive, reaching for Tommy. Lydia's heart hammered in her chest, drowning out her thoughts. She had to act. The darkness pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing directly from her fear, feeding on it. "Tommy!" she screamed, her voice tearing through the fog, desperately pulling at him. The shadows hissed, scraping against the walls, echoing in her ears like thunder. "Mom! I can't think." Tommy's voice fractured, splintering like glass under pressure. Lydia felt her resolve waver, but a raw edge of panic propelled her. She closed her eyes for a split second, trying to center herself, calling on the fragments of memory. Her father's stories flitted like moths in her mind, shadows woven with warnings. What was it he said about the bridge? The doorway? "Tommy," she breathed, clenching her fists till her nails bit into her palms. "I need you to listen to me. You're stronger than this." The shadows recoiled around them, whispering darker truths. "He belongs to us, Lydia. You cannot save him," the voice cracked, resonating with glee. The very air hummed, taunting her sanity. Those stories from her childhood returned of lost children, and dreams turned to nightmares, of those who fought and lost. "No," she whispered to herself. "We're not going to be another tale." Fighting through the growing tempest, she stumbled to the old chest in the corner, where her father kept old tomes and relics. The familiar weight of the dusty books felt like a lifeline in her hand. The tome that held the sacred secrets, the one he'd warned her about. "Focus on me, Tommy," Lydia barked, setting the book on the table, bracing herself against its musty surface. She flipped it open, her trembling fingers racing over the ancient text. The words seemed to pulse with a life of their own, shadows flickering in and out as she read. "Use the light." Her voice cracked. "We need to find the light, we have to push them back." Around her, the shadows twisted with rage, contorting into monstrous forms that howled as they clawed at the air, desperate to claim victory. Lydia had to ground them. It was no longer just about fighting, it was about calling back the reality they threatened to tear apart. "Out, out, out." She gasped, trying to focus on the incantation, visualizing a barrier of light. "Tommy, help me. I can't. They won't let me." He struggled against the coldness wrapping around him, but she could see a flicker of the boy she loved still shining bright within those haunted eyes. "Think of your happiest place," Lydia urged, her voice gaining strength. "Think of summer. The park. Our picnic." Tommy's breath came in ragged gasps, but she saw the moment his memories ignited, the warmth fighting against the suffocating blackness. "Yeah. The park," he echoed, his arms stretching out toward her as he pushed against the shadows that constricted around him. The connection like a thread weaving through the dark pulled taut. Suddenly, a blazing light burst from the pages of the tome, shooting like a sunbeam through the suffocating dusk. It illuminated the room, the shadows shrieking as they recoiled. Lydia could feel the pressure begin to crack, the dark chains binding Tommy snapping like brittle twigs, but the gravelly voice roared, furious, the shadows thrashing violently. "You can't escape. The curse will know." Lydia shouted, fear twisting into indomitable rage. "You will not take my child." The light intensified, radiating as if fueled by her defiance. Yet just before it fully enveloped them, the shadows howled and the world around them flickered like a dying flame. The unease bubbled back, the shadows recoiling, but only temporarily. "Lydia." Tommy's voice caught on the edge of terror, fading again. With one final push, she poured the last of her energy into the light, desperate to seal the door they threatened to break through. As its brilliance flared, shattering the darkness, she saw the glimpse of something beyond, a much larger shadow lurking in the recesses, waiting as if biding its time, and then it struck her this was only the beginning. "Hold on, Tommy," she yelled, barely maintaining her grip on reality. The shadow shrieked in defiance, thrumming through the very core of her being. Would the light hold, or would the darkness simply retreat, plotting its revenge? As she felt the world rupture, she knew they were not out of danger yet. Not by a long shot. What other secrets would she unearth to save her son and herself? The answers waited, lurking just beyond the edge of light. The light burst outward, illuminating the room like a star rising at dawn. Lydia felt a rush of warmth flood through her, a desperate hope igniting against the menacing chill. But just as quickly, the shadows writhed, angry and alive, pulling back only to regroup with renewed ferocity. "Tommy!" Lydia shouted again, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. She could barely see him through the brightness, flickers of shadows clawing at the edges of her vision, intermingling with the light. "Stay with me. I'm trying." He gasped, every word a battle. She noticed the shadows around him flickering erratically as if recognizing the threat of the growing light. They twisted, retreating only to reform, their clamoring whispers louder than the hiss of boiling water. The tome lay open before her, its pages fluttering wildly. "Come on," Lydia cried, her hands trembling over the words. "You have to work. Please." She could scarcely breathe, her heart pounding a tattoo of desperation. With each frantic inhale, the shadows surged, wrapping tighter around her as she chanted. She felt an electric surge weave through the air, the power of her intent threading into the cosmic fabric. The shadows squirmed, a cacophony of hisses mingling with furious growls. "Your son is ours, Lydia." They screeched, their icy breath creeping down her spine. In that moment, she saw him, Tommy, brave and strong, straining against the darkness with all his might. "Keep thinking of the park. Keep it in your head," she urged, desperate to anchor the thought deeper in his soul. "Our picnic, the sun on your face." Mom, his voice mingled with the howling winds of the shadows, wavering under the pressure. She could see the shadows coiling around him like serpents, constricting, tightening their grip. Then, from deep within, a well of strength surged in her. It felt primal, igniting like dry kindling, cracking through the fear as she refined her focus on the light. "I didn't raise a coward," she shouted, her voice rising above the chaos, vibrato echoing deep within her chest. The light exploded outward again, an unyielding wave. For an instant, the shadows screeched in protest, dissolving like mist under the sun. Lydia could feel the air shift, a new heaviness weighing down on her heart. Yet another force lurked just beyond, something far worse waiting in the shadows, and then, as the light began to fade, a trembling breath escaped her lips. She felt it, the unmistakable flutter of the dark approaching, not retreating but regrouping. The shadows could not be vanquished, they morphed, swirling like smoke, preparing for a second assault. "Lydia!" Tommy cried, his voice raw, filled with fear. "It's coming back. Not while I'm standing." Her hands trembled as she clutched the pages of the tome. Dark tendrils snaked at her feet, eager to pull her down. She gritted her teeth, her fear morphing into defiance, each shadow raising the hairs on her arms. The world around her twisted, the room in chaos as the light began to flicker. She pushed against the weight of the dark, reminding herself of countless nights spent listening to her father's whispered warnings. But his tales didn't prepare her for this. Would they even matter? "Breathe, Tommy. Just breathe." An idea threaded through her mind, something hidden in the stories of her past. A final trick, her father's words echoing, to call the shadows, summon them to serve. But never give them power. Closing her eyes, she drew in a deep breath. "You want him?" she yelled, voice echoing through the growing darkness. "Then come for me." She lunged forward into the thick tendrils. A moment of silence hung heavy in the air, the shadows hesitating. Lydia felt a shiver of terror creep up her spine, as if the darkness itself trembled before her declaration. But then the shadows lunged, pulling her deeper into their depths. The light flickered, slipping from her grasp, and suddenly, a haunting whisper brushed against her ear. "What have you done?" Lydia's heart thundered as reality shook around her, yielding to the approaching darkness. What came next? As fear clawed at her throat like icy fingers, she realized with dread that she had not just called to the shadows, but summoned something far more sinister. Could they survive the night? The answer loomed like a specter, lurking just behind the growing dark. The shadows unfurled like ravenous wings, swallowing the light and wrapping around Lydia. The chill seeped deeper into her bones, and as the whispers echoed louder, she felt bile rise in her throat. "Come for me!" she had shouted, but what had she awakened? "Mom!" Tommy's voice broke through the dark, sharp and terrified. The shadows hissed, the sound erratic like 1,000 trapped souls clawing for release. Lydia could barely see anything now, her own body felt distant, numb with dread. The darkness flooded around her, a thick blanket smothering every flicker of hope. "Tommy, hold on." She squeezed the tome tighter, as if that single gesture could shield them from the unseen horror swirling just out of reach. Memories flickered in her mind, warnings her father had whispered over the years, warnings she had thought mere superstition. You must never show fear. But fear was all she felt. The shadows loomed closer, sinister figures in the darkness. They were alive, twisting and squirming, forming faces that sneered and grinned. Tommy's face, pale and straining, pierced through the veil of darkness, but it was fading. Whatever was happening to her son felt primal, a clawing sensation in her heart. Remember the light. Lydia cried out, desperately trying to summon her father's teachings. The light can protect us, it can cast them away. She focused all her energy, envisioning the warmth of sunshine, the brightness over the park where they spent so many joyful days. It was the only anchor she had. Tommy's voice quaked. I can't see it. Just hold on. Lydia screamed, pushing against the darkness that sought to claim her. She closed her eyes, calling on every ounce of her will. She could feel her heart thundering in her chest, pounding like a warning bell. We want to let you take us. Suddenly, the shadows surged. They pressed against her, cold and oppressive, binding her limbs, squeezing the breath from her lungs. The air thickened, indistinguishable sounds swirling around them, and for a moment, all hope seemed to slip from her grasp, but then she felt it. A flicker, weak but real. Here. She cried, wills clashing against the dark, summoning every memory of radiant days. Here is the light. A tiny glow pulsed from the tome, fighting the encroaching shadows. It flickered like a candle in a storm, wild and uncertain, but it held. It pressed back, illuminating the room just enough to see the grotesque forms writhing in the dark. Tommy, keep your focus on me. Lydia urged, heart racing. We're almost there. Don't look away. His breath was a ragged whisper. I see it. I see the light. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in a high-pitched wail that cut through the air like glass. They thrashed wildly, their grotesque forms collapsing back, twisting as if to escape the searing warmth. Lydia stepped forward, heart racing, as she felt a surge of energy flood through her. She reached out to her son, feeling hope reignite, but then, a deep voice rumbled, anchoring her in icy dread. You can't escape. You called us and we will collect. The darkness constricted again, coiling tighter, pulling at her with insatiable hunger. Lydia gasped, real fear crashing over her. When had she invited this horror into their lives? She had to think. What was the next move? Remember. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. To summon is to invite presence but control it, Lydia. You have to dominate it. Then suddenly, a new sensation, like fingers of frost creeping down her back. Look away, Lydia. Look away. Tommy cried, voice shaking as the air tightened. A decision had to be made, and quickly. What do I do? She whispered, eyes flitting between the flickering light and the shadows surging forth, feeling the weight of their menace. As the malevolent voices grew louder, swirls of darkness encased her in doubt, the pressure mounting. Lydia understood the gravity of her summons. What did she truly invite into their lives? The answer became clear as she felt a darkness beyond her wildest nightmares coiling around them, drawing nearer. It was not just monsters hiding in the shadows, it was something more ancient, something far worse. Would they survive the night, or had she just sealed their fates in darkness? A tremor raced through her. As the shadows danced and twisted, Lydia clenched the tome in desperation. Was there still a path to salvation? Or had the darkest hour arrived? The shadows crackled around Lydia like angry flames, and the tome in her hands began to thrum, a heartbeat against her palm. She felt its energy pulsing through her. Was it hers, or the power of what lay within its pages? Fear twisted into determination, and she was desperately searching for answers. Tommy! She shouted, her voice raw. We have to stand together. Remember the stories. The ones about courage and light. The darkness recoiled momentarily, the shadows hesitating as if considering. She dared to hope, catching sight of her boy's terrified eyes searching for reassurance, but that flicker of light began to dim. "Mom, they're coming. I can't, it's too cold." Tommy's whimper cut through the thickening silence. The shadows lurched closer, hissing venomous words, promised pain. "Stand firm. Find your strength," Lydia urged, feeling the warmth of the memories pushing against the icy grasp of despair. But the shadows laughed, a sound that rumbled deep and echoed in her bones. "You think you have strength? You think you can bind us?" The voice was twisted, slippery and alive, writhing through the air like smoke. "You are nothing but a remnant, a fading spark within this void." "Stop!" Lydia roared, thrusting the tome forward as the bright pulse flickered again, answering her call. The shadows shrieked, torn between despair and fury. "I'll fight you," she declared, each word laced with a newfound vigor. But the shadows did not relent, tightening their grip, eagerly drawing her into their fold. "Then come to join the darkness," they taunted in a deep chorus, swarming from all sides. "Feel the frost that claims your light." Every nerve in her body screamed. Lydia's heart raced, thumping against her ribcage, overwhelming her senses. She forced herself to focus, looking past the looming dark toward her son. "Tommy, remember when we went camping? The fire was our friend. We carved out our safety from the night. Think of that warmth." He nodded, but his small form trembled, the shadows leeching the courage from him. Desperate, she instinctively flipped through the pages of the tome, searching for something, anything that could help them. Most of the text was written in a strange, sprawling hand, but as she scanned, her eyes caught a phrase that glowed softly, the words lighting up against the creeping shadows. "Awaken the essence of the light." Lydia narrowed her gaze, feeling within her the spark igniting, a roar of defiance against the encroaching terror. "Tommy, close your eyes. Picture the fire. Picture the family around it, the safety we feel." The shadows recoiled again, visibly shaking. Their sneers shifted to looks of rage, and Lydia nearly lost her footing as they screamed, "You cannot bind us with mere memories." But she had to try. "You're wrong. We are stronger together." Her voice rang out, firm and fierce, and she summoned every cherished moment, laughter, warmth, love, feeling their energies flow into her. They swirled and surged, fueling the glow of the tome until it flared brilliantly, illuminating the room with a pure radiance that clashed with the dark, and for a breath, they were bathed in light, and the shadows flinched and hissed, all eyes darting toward the blinding glow, but the moment lingered too long. A guttural growl reverberated in the darkness. "You think light drives us away? You have merely awakened us. We feed on that warmth, you foolish girl." With that admission, a violent tremor shot through the room, shaking books from shelves, sending dust flying into the air. The shadows swelled, merging, forming a singular vortex of unrelenting terror, eyes glistening like coals in a dying fire. "Tommy! Hold on!" Lydia shouted, preparing for the surge that was to come, clutching the tome with every shred of strength she could muster, but doubt crept in like a thief, gnawing at her resolve. What if they couldn't hold this light? What if all she had done was worsen their plight? Panic bubbled just underneath her skin, and the shadows began to swirl faster, the center morphing into something gigantic and abhorrent. "You will submit." Just then, a flicker of brave defiance danced in her son's eyes. "We'll fight," Tommy yelled, squeezing his hands into fists. "We won't give up." In that moment, with the shadows pulsing all around, a dark fire ignited within Lydia. They would face the abyss together. But as the monstrous form loomed ever larger, a horrifying question hung in the air: was this courage enough to face the ancient evil rising before them? The tome throbbed violently, its light flickering ever so slightly. Lydia needed to know, but the truth lay just beyond the grasp of their courage. With shadows surging, was this their last stand, or the moment of awakening their true power? The shadows roared, a cacophony of malice that rolled over them like a thunderstorm. Lydia pressed the tome closer to Tommy, feeling the warmth of its light still flickering against the onslaught of darkness. "We can't lose this," she shouted, her heart hammering in her chest. As the vortex encroached, a monstrous amalgamation of fury and despair, she could feel something deep within her quivering. The shadows whipped around them, clawing, reaching, trying to draw them in. Each tendril hissed with frustration, each attempt laced with promises of obliteration. "Tommy, listen to me." She could barely hear her own voice above the shrieks of the void. "We have to call on it. The light within us. Remember how strong our love is. Remember how it warmed us through the cold." His small face crumpled with fear, but he gritted his teeth and nodded. "I will." Lydia took a deep breath and closed her eyes, centering herself. She could feel time dilate as she reached inward. Memories flooded her mind, Tommy's laughter echoing in the park, the light shining through the trees, the comfort of his little body curled against her. She focused on that warmth. She felt the tome pulse, resonating with her memories. Inside her mind, the essence of light, flickering from small memories, began to grow. The brightness surged, spreading outwards like wildfire, countering the shadows that soaked up their energy. Suddenly, the shadows reared back, a palpable anger resonating from their depths. "What are you doing? You cannot fight us with mere feelings," they shrieked. But Lydia wouldn't be dissuaded. She gripped Tommy's hand tighter, their fingers interlaced like roots of a tree bound to withstand the storm. "We are more than memories," she announced, her voice steadying. "We are the story. Our hearts are the flame." The light from the tome blazed, illuminating the space, battling the encroaching dark. It carved a path through the chaos, illuminating grotesque faces swirling just beyond the glow, their mouths twisted in silent roars. They reached for her and Tommy, but each time they neared, the fierce light burned hotter, forcing them back. However, just as triumph felt near, the shadows began to shift, coalescing into more substantial forms, figures she recognized from stories told long ago. A tale of light and dark, so quaint, they mocked, voices intertwining like twisted roots. "You think your love can defeat what lurks in the shadows?" But Lydia gripped the tome tighter, determination flooding her veins. "You lie!" she cried. "Love is what gives us strength to fight." Tommy squeezed her hand, visibly emboldened now. "We want to let you win. We're together." In an instant, a bright flash erupted from the tome, casting faceless darkness aside. The air vibrated, replete with raw energy that seemed to distort the fabric of reality around them. The shadows shrieked, their forms wavering, faltering under the surge of light. But the victory felt hollow. The monstrous figure began to swell, merging shadows growing thicker, darker. "You think this light can sustain itself? Think again." It roared, and the ground beneath her trembled. As Lydia's light dimmed, doubt clawed at her insides. What now? This wasn't merely a battle against darkness, this was a war against despair itself. Shadows slithered, their whispers creeping into the cracks of her thoughts, threatening to drown out hope once more. "Tommy!" she screamed, fighting to stay present in this moment of terror. "Stay with me. Focus on the fire we made on those cold summer nights." But the shadows grinned a sly, hungry smile. "You will tire. You will fail. We will consume you both." And in the frantic swirl of emotions, Lydia noticed the flicker of the tome was fading, the shadows rushing in to snuff out the last embers of light. Would they be swallowed whole by this ancient evil? It was a race against time. Drawing on every ounce of strength, she steeled herself and yelled, "We're more than you think, we are the hearts that fight in the dark." As the echoes of her voice reverberated, something shifted. The darkness began to falter, and for a moment, a flicker of hope broke through the despair. But Lydia sensed the threat was far from over, an insidious presence awaiting its chance. With the ground quaking beneath them and the shadows coiling closer, Lydia had to wonder what lay beyond this thin line of light. Would the courage she summoned be enough when the darkness unleashed its true form? Before she could dwell on the looming tension, a bone-chilling whisper cut through the air. This isn't the end. We will rise again. And there, amidst the chaos, the question lingered: were they ready for the fight yet to come? The shadows rippled, shifting dangerously closer, driven by an unseen fury. Lydia's heart raced like a wild bird trapped in a cage, while the tome pulsated in her grip, wavering with the ebb and flow of light and dark. Tommy's small face was a mask of determination, but the fear lurking in his eyes betrayed the haunting reality of their precarious situation. Lydia. Tommy's voice broke through the tumult. Can we still use the stories? The ones from Grandma? Maybe. She took a sharp intake of breath, her mind racing as the shadows clawed at the edges of her consciousness. They carry power, Tommy. But we need to remember them right. Focus. The one with the brave knight and the dragon. He shouted, forcing the panic from his voice. As if fueled by their desperate hope, images flashed in Lydia's mind. The knight who fought for his loved ones, wielding courage like a sword against the dark. Yes. They were brave because they fought not just for themselves but for their loved ones, just like us. The shadows paused, almost intrigued. For a fleeting moment, Lydia felt a shift in the atmosphere. The dark forms quivered, uncertainty feeding their rage. What are you doing? They snarled, as if recoiling from the thought. You're wasting your breath. But Lydia held firm, her voice rising in fervor. No. These tales live on. Each one a spark, each one a shield. She could feel the warmth of the memories growing, igniting an inner fire that lit up her soul. Lydia and Tommy began to chant the stories, their voices rising against the tumult of despair. Once was a brave knight. He fought without fear. He faced down the shadows and with love in his heart, he conquered the darkness. Tommy interjected, each word punctuated by the flickering light. With every tale, the shadows shrieked, their forms squirming in repulsion. Lydia could feel the tome vibrating violently in her grip, roaring in response to their defiance. The shadows struggled to maintain form, twisting violently, the grotesque faces distorting into masks of rage. Your words cannot save you. They bellowed, the ground quaking under their weight. You have forgotten the price of your tales. Yet, Lydia pressed on, her heart pounding like war drums. Visions of love, warmth, and togetherness spilled from her mouth, weaving a tapestry of hope. A mother's love kept the dark at bay. A daughter's laughter shone through the night. Tommy's voice choked with emotion, but he pushed through. We're not alone, darkness. We are stronger together. Suddenly, the tome erupted with a blinding flash of light, enveloping them both like a warm embrace. The ground rumbled, shadows collapsing in on themselves, and the cacophony of snarls faded to whispers of disbelief. The figures that had taunted them melted away, reduced to mere scraps of fog. But as triumph flickered bright, a deeper darkness seeped in. From within the wreckage stirred something larger, something stronger. You think you've won? A voice rumbled, deep as the earth itself. You've only awakened what slumbers beneath. Lydia's stomach dropped as shadows reformed, growing darker than before, a sinister shape that loomed over them like an ancient beast stirred by a distant echo of their hope. The air thickened with dread, the warmth of the stories quivering like a candle flame on the brink of snuffing out. We were warned of this, Lydia breathed, her voice barely a whisper. Stories made flesh, but what does it want? The shadows pulsed, racing forward, but in their advance, they whispered dark promises and temptations. Join us. Be part of the tales that fade into oblivion. As panic clawed at her heart, Lydia clenched Tommy's hand tighter. We're not going anywhere. But a new fear gripped her mind, a feeling that they might not just be battling the shadows but awakening nightmares that had once been sealed away. What's the price? Lydia shouted, the shadows circling them like hungry wolves. And from the abyss, a chilling laughter echoed, resonating in the deepest bones of the earth, promising a reckoning that loomed on the horizon. Are you ready to pay it? With the shadows advancing and the lingering darkness tightening around them, Lydia wondered one last time what horrors awaited if they couldn't stay ahead. The air crackled with tension, thick as the fog rolling in around them. Shadows loomed, deep, swirling, almost liquid in their malice. Lydia felt Tommy's grip go cold, his small hand trembling in hers. The weight of forgotten nightmares pressed on her, heavy with dread. "What do you want from us?" she shouted, the words almost lost in the howling darkness. The laughter grew, resonating like a deep bass note, filling the night with a sense of impending doom. "Join us," the shadows spoke in chorus, their voices a chilling symphony. "Embrace your fears. Let them shape you. You shall be worthy at last." Worthy? Worthy of what? Tommy's voice, barely above a whisper, seemed to flicker through the encroaching darkness like a candle in a storm. The shadows swirled, ominous forms weaving ancient tales of despair. "Worthy of power, dear children. Power that can reshape reality. Power to turn your stories into nightmares, or wonders. The choice is yours, if you dare." Lydia's heart pounded louder in her chest, each beat a desperate plea for clarity. "We don't want your power. We just want to be free." The shadows recoiled momentarily. A flicker of vulnerability trembled through their forms. But then, the growls returned, darker than ever. "Freedom is a cage, child. You cannot escape without paying the price." As the darkness pressed forward, Lydia had no choice. "Then what is the price?" she demanded, summoning every ounce of defiance left within. "We will take what none can afford to lose. A piece of your very soul or a secret that binds you. Tell us your deepest fear, or your darkest truth, and you will awaken in this world, or never awake at all." Tommy gasped, his eyes wide. "Don't, Lydia." But she felt the shadows inching closer, their intent palpable. Each breath she took thickened with terror. "Let me speak." Lydia pulled Tommy closer, her mind racing. If they told a secret, would that weaken them? What if the price was too steep, too horrific to bear? In her mind, the stories swirled, memories of Grandma's tales flooded back. Dark deeds, hidden fears, faceless monsters lurking in the depths. Could the answer be found in those ages-old yarns? "You want a truth?" she called, stepping forward. "Fine. I'm afraid that if I tell you my secret, I won't come back from it. I can't let my brother get lost in this. I won't lose him." "True fear," the shadows hissed, their forms smearing in confusion. "You've opened a window, and we must listen." Lydia felt power rush through her, a rush of warmth igniting her soul. Driven by desperation, she gripped the tome, feeling its pulse synchronize with her resolve. "Scarier than facing you is watching my family suffer because they never found peace. My greatest fear is leaving Tommy alone in a world covered in shadows." In that moment, the shadows shivered. They loomed larger, anger swirling within the void. "You think your words hold weight? You've only fed the dark." Tommy tugged at Lydia's hand, pulling her back. "Stop. They'll take you for sure." But it was too late, the shadows lunged, their chaos consuming all light. Darkness seeped into every crevice, pulling Lydia into its seething mass. Echoes of whispers filled her ears, urging her to join, to surrender. "Join us and give up your hope." "Never!" Lydia shouted, feeling the warmth of her stories fighting against the cold grasp of despair. Suddenly, the tome erupted one last time, a blinding light splitting the shadows as they writhed in fury. A rift opened, a gaping void hovering before them, beckoning and threatening all in one. "Make your choice, Lydia." The shadows screamed, desperation clawing at their voices. "Claim your fate, or be devoured." Caught between the dark abyss and the flickering remnants of hope, Lydia understood this battle was only just beginning. But she felt it with certainty, their escape hinged not just on the choices they made now, but on the darkness they would eventually confront. "What do we do?" Tommy whispered, terror making his voice tremble. Before Lydia could reply, the shadows roared, dark figures twisting into grotesque shapes. A single question hung in the air, a promise of horror yet to come: will you step into the night, or will the night consume you instead? The moment hung heavy, poised on a precipice, and Lydia could only brace for the storm ahead. The shadows loomed, swirling with an insatiable hunger, and Lydia's heart raced like a wildfire in a dry forest. With every word she had uttered, she had fueled their twisted hunger. But now, the choice was hers. She felt the power of the tome thrumming in her hands, and time seemed to stretch as she grasped at thoughts and memories, fighting through the panic clawing at her throat. "Tommy," she whispered, pulling him closer. "Whatever happens, we are in this together. You stay with me, and we can still find a way out." Their hands intertwined, a lifeline in the storm, burning brighter than the encroaching dark. "I'm scared, Mom." Tommy's voice trembled, but in his eyes, she saw a flicker of bravery, a light that countered the shadows trying to entice them into despair. "Me too," she replied, her voice steady with resolve. "But fear doesn't have to own us. We'll turn it into strength. Remember what Grandma always said about fighting the dark. Let your heart be the fire." A spark ignited in Tommy's eyes. "Right. Let us remember the good things. Like the picnics, and the stars, the fire." As they spoke these words, the air shimmered, the warmth of their memories flowing through the tome like a river of golden light. Colors danced around them, banishing the flickering shadows that receded for just a moment of pure strength. Lydia raised the tome high, the light growing brighter, pushing against the darkness that sought to pull them under. "You don't own us," she shouted, every ounce of defiance pouring into her words. "We are the stories of love, bravery, and hope. We'll make you remember what it means to fear. I want to let you take my mom." Tommy shouted, fire burning in his chest, echoing his mother's proclamation. The shadows shrieked in anger, faces twisting in anguish as the light surged, filling every crevice and pushing nearer, brighter, fighting to banish the dark once and for all. The dark figures twisted in fury, but their strength faltered, fury melting into fear at the relentless tide of love and defiance attacking them, but darkness never surrenders easily. "You cannot extinguish the night." The shadows bellowed, their voices merging into a haunting chorus that reverberated through the air. "We will rise again." Lydia felt the air thicken as the darkness pulsed, surrounding them in creeping dread, whispering of failure and despair. She gritted her teeth, refusing to let the shadows win. "You need to understand, fear isn't my only weapon." She took a step forward, instinctively reaching for the stories imparted through generations. "We've endured far too much to be undone by you. Love is our shield, and it will break every chain binding us." Tommy echoed her conviction. "And you're just shadows. You don't have real power, we do." With that, they channeled all they had into the tome, visualizing each cherished moment pouring out, creating a barrier against the creeping darkness. Suddenly, from deep within the tome, an explosion of light erupted, radiating warmth and brilliance, engulfing the room in a cocoon of their united strength and refusing to relent. "Fighters of love!" Lydia called, feeling energized, as the shadows recoiled one last time. "This isn't over, but we will not yield." With a blinding flash, the light surged outwards, shimmering like the dawn breaking over the horizon, and the shadows shrieked as they writhed, retreating against the brilliance, losing their grip on reality. Lydia and Tommy pushed forward, hand in hand, together as they advanced through the swirl of chaos, the shimmering light illuminating their path with courage. And then, as quickly as it began, the darkness shattered. The shadows evaporated into nothing, dissipating in the bright glow, the cries of anguish replaced by silence. In that moment of stillness, Lydia and Tommy stood at the epicenter, gasping for breath. Their hearts raced, but the oppressive weight lifted. They had fought and won, at least for now. "Did we do it?" Tommy gasped, looking up at her with wide eyes, glimmering with hope and exhaustion. Yeah, I think we did, Lydia whispered, wiping away the tears streaming down her cheeks. They stood there, together in the cocoon of light, the echoes of darkness fading into a distance that stretched beyond the edge of their fears. The shadows were banished, and for that, they savored the delicate breath of freedom wrapped in the warm glow of sunrise. As they stepped out of that radiant bubble into the quiet aftermath, Lydia felt a shift within her. Fears still lurked, but her heart felt fortified with the untold power of love, resilience, and the stories that began the fight against the unseen. Mom, Tommy whispered, squeezing her hand tight. Do you think it's really over? Lydia knelt down, looking him square in the eye, her voice steady and comforting. It's over for now. But we know how to battle darkness now, don't we? He nodded, a brave smile breaking through his initial worry. Yeah. We can do anything together. With resolve forged anew, they walked back into Whispering Pines, ready to face whatever might come next. They would keep their stories alive, and together, they could conquer any shadow that dared to whisper their names in fear. And as they stepped into the beauty of sunrise, Lydia couldn't help but hold on to hope, knowing that the true battles were won not just with courage, but with love, a bond that truly outshines the darkness. Now, if you loved this story and want more chilling adventures, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales that are waiting just for you. You have to smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, ensuring that our voices are heard. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion, because your thoughts matter, and I can't wait to hear from you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us keep this community growing and thriving together, one heart-pounding story at a time.